Okay, so for today we're going to keep doing the photo blog exercise. And so the goal here is to complete this, make this work, and make it look nice and all that. And so that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to review what we did yesterday in case you didn't get all the pieces you need to make this. I just want to reiterate that even if you didn't understand everything we've done so far, I have shown you code to do all the pieces necessary to implement this project. So if you looked at the prior examples, you could just copy and paste most of them. So I'm going to walk through those. So we'll make a new folder. I put all the code on GitHub. So the link's over there. GitHub/Golang-book./bootcamp examples. So you can see the code I'm writing. And then I'm just going to add a folder called HTTP examples in day 4 of week 2. Okay, so I'm going to make a main.go file in here, and we will walk through all the pieces. So remember, start main, and we start a server with http.listen and serve. Give it address. So in the example, it was 8080. Right? And then nil for the handler. The way we create handlers is by saying handle func. You give it the route and a handler. So just so we understand this, a handler can be a function. So I'm going to handle some route. I'm just going to name it that. And it's going to take a response writer and a request. It doesn't return anything. This implements the handle func. That's the same type, so I can use it here. I can just say handle some route. So in general, you use handle func, you give it the name of the route, and then you give it the name of a function that you want it to call, and it's going to call that function. So that's how we implement routes. So that's, if we want to add more, we just add more here. Remember that if we put a slash on it, it would handle under it. You know, if I had some route 2, it would go there. But we don't need to do that for the example. The way templates work is that we create another file, right? And so maybe you have an assets folder, right? So I have assets under here, and then a folder for templates. And then I just throw in a file in there. You know, I'll call it index.go.html. It can be called whatever you want. And then here is just text. So you can just write HTML. And so on. And then the way we use it here is we have to parse the template and then execute it. So we can parse it by using template.parse files, give it the file name, which is going to be assets, templates, index.go.html. That's going to return a template and possibly an error. So typically what you do with error in an HTTP is you're going to return that error to the client so they can see the error. Sorry, error.error. And then an error code 500 means internal server error. So that's typically, if you need to handle an error, you do something like this. You don't have to, you can do whatever you want, but that's a good way to do it. Now we have a template, and now we just need to execute it. And the way you execute, so parse template. Step number 2, execute template. The way we execute template is we say execute template. Okay, and it takes in here a writer. The writer is going to be your response because that's what you're executing it to. And then you give it the name of the template, which will match the file name. So just do this. And then you give it data. So the data can be anything. But a common pattern is to create a struct. So I'm going to do that and say, you know, this is my model, we'll call it that. it's a struct. And it's going to have fields, right? So it might have some field as an int. And so then I would over here say my model braces some field is, say, 123. And what this is going to do is it's going to go parse this template. Sorry, it already parsed it. It built a tree. It's going to go execute this template and look for things like this. And it's going to be called dot some field. And it's going to replace this whole thing here with the contents of some field. So 123. If we want to make more than one thing, we can use values and say a slice of ints. Okay. And then we can do that over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that will call, and we can use range. So we can say range dot values and then end. And then inside of here, it'll happen however many times there are, one for each value, right? And so I could say use dot, and this is going to print, you can make a comment, I think, with, it's one of the things you can do. It's in the other one. This way, with /star. So anything in a comment will be printed in the template. So this is going to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? It's going to happen once for each value. That's what the range does. You can use if too, similar. If it was a Boolean, it would be true or false. But if it's a string or something, with the if, it means like if the string contains something, then it's going to happen. So I can show you that. So we might have data is a string, and I might over here say data some value. And then if I do if dot sum, sorry, it's called data. So this happens if data is not equal to the empty string, okay?
So it just checks, hey, is there something there?
Yeah. This is
really helpful. It's like it's all familiar, but it's good just to see it again.
So you can do if like that, and it does it for other things too. You can look up how it handles other types of data. But you can also use true and false, which would be more typical, but you can do other things as well. So this will render that template to the page, because that's what this is doing. It's putting it into the response. And so actually, if your page includes like the doc type, you don't have to do anything more than this, because it will see that doc type and be like, oh, it's HTML, set the right content type, write out the right data, and you'll see the right page in your browser. So this is how we can make templates. If you want to do more than one template, you can pass it in here by like saying another file.
Can I get a copy of that over on Scratch?
Yeah, so I'm trying to upload the files directly to GitHub because the whole Scratch thing is very confusing. And people are for some reason not able to find the prior examples. And so I'm hoping maybe that I can just put all the code necessary to do this project in here and people can copy it right from it. But I can commit it. And so you can add another file by like giving it different names. So we might have admin or something, or maybe login, right? And the point is, if you want to use the login, you just go down here and change that to login, and that will use that template. So you can parse it like that. Okay, so that's how we do templates. For sessions, the way we do sessions. So what I'm going to do here is add another handler, just so that we can see this differently. Some session route. And so we might have another route down here. some session. And so we'll call this function instead. And so now it'll come here. The way we're going to do sessions is we're going to use that Gorilla library. So to find that, you can go to Google and search for Golang Gorilla. And then it'll be this, the Golang Web Toolkit. And we're using the sessions, so Gorilla/sessions. And so you need to do this. You need to copy this guy. And in your terminal, type go get and hand it that. And it will go download it. If that doesn't work, let me know because your Go path is probably broken. And so that's how we're going to get that library. And then we're going to use it. And so the example they have here is this. So we're just going to copy that, paste it here. We also need to do this. So we have these 2 bits of code here. Oops. This creates the session store. Remember to change this to some other password. You know, don't use the one they have there. Though this is just an example, so it doesn't really matter. And the session name here, I'm just going to change that to session. You can call it anything you want. And the point is this returns you a map, and you can put and retrieve and do anything with the data inside of it. So I get the session. Now I have the session. The thing states that if there wasn't a session, it just creates a brand new one. So we have it available to do with what we want. And so basically, to get a value, I say value : session, you know, whatever I call it. It's up to me what I call that, right? So I'm going to take that out. To set a value, you say session, and you can put anything here. You can put a number, you can put a string, you can put anything you want, okay? The type is interface, so it can take any type of object. To delete, you just use the built-in delete function, and you give it, sorry, this should be values, I'm sorry. And you give it the key name, and it will remove it from the session, okay? So here I could get something that was previously saved in the session. If it wasn't already in there, this will be nil. Okay, it'll be nil if it wasn't already in there. And this is how I can set a value. I just use the same brackets and equal. And then this is how I can delete a value. So you give it the same map, and you give it a key, and it's going to remove this from the map. So if you want to get something as a type, so in this case, value, the type of value is an interface. Okay. If you want to get it as a string, you have to do a cast. So if I want to get this as a string, you do it that way. If you do that, you really need to do this. Okay. Otherwise, it'll panic if it's not a string. So, in general, unless you care about OK, I would just do underscore. So, the meaning of this is get the value out of here, cast it, assert it as a string. That's the string variable here. If it wasn't in there, it'll be the empty string. Just look for that. If it wasn't there, it'll be whatever it was saved as. Okay. So, just use strings and it'll be easier. Right, so this should be okay, so it's complaining because I didn't use these, so I'm just going to use them. So that's how we can do session. So we can use that. We can make a page, the login page can put something into the session. All the subsequent pages can, the first thing they do is look for something in the session. If it's not there, redirect them, give them an error, tell them, hey, you're not logged in. If it is there, then you know they're logged in. And then log out, you just need to delete the session. But that's how we can do sessions.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
how that works in practice? So each time someone logs in, they're starting to create a new session.
Yeah.
And is it using the login data, that like their name and email address or password?
Sure. Let's look at what that might look like. So let's say we're creating another function for login. So this is the page we'd hit for login, and we'd say something like, if the method is post, that means they submitted the form. Because this page will do two things. It'll be, if they just, went to their URL and typed /login, they would just see, that would be a GET request. But if they fill in the form and hit submit, that's going to be a post request. So this is only if it's a post. What we'll do is we'll get the session, right? So actually we're probably just always going to get the session. And then inside of here, what we'll do is we'll set, if we'll get the email and the password. So we'll say email is form value, email. The password is the password. And then we say, if email equals what, whatever, and password, some password, right? Like I said, you can hard code these to be what you want them to be. So if they're equal, then we set it in the session. So we'd say session.values, logged in, we can just say yes or whatever. And then otherwise, we would probably return an error. We'd say something like not invalid credentials or something.
So you say we could hard code, but if you want to have like people posting things on a blog, and then they just have access to only the ones they posted or something, then is there a way to make it so it's variable, password, email, as a pair?
Yeah, so we haven't covered databases, so having to store this, we don't know how to do that yet. We'll get there. But yeah, that's how you would do it. You would store user information in a database.
Oh, how about, yeah, I guess it's
For now, just like hard
Yeah.
code, if username, if email equals bob@example.com.
okay.
I forget the HTTP code for, I think it's 402.
So what's the Gorilla code do?
That gives us a session. It implements the session for us. Because without that, we can't do session.
You know what session is?
Oh,
Okay, so the web stateless, every request from a client goes to the server fills it, and then generally forgets about the client. And so to maintain state, you gotta have some sort of identification that a cookie that goes with every request to the server. And then you want to associate that cookie, some unique ID with each user. So you can reference that unique ID against the database.
so the session is something happening on the server that's key to the client?
No. The session is stored in the user's cookies. So when the user makes a request to your site, it sends along those cookies.
Okay.
And this session here is getting them out of the cookie. So the store.get here, the session is not stored in our server, it's stored in those cookies. So it's just decrypting the cookie.
So every time something goes back and forth between the server and the client, it knows it's one session because it's pulling out of the cookie information. The client
That's right.
says, this is still part of this session.
That's right.
Until it's turned off, until the session's over. And
Yeah.
it's logged out.
Yeah. So we have this session stored in cookies that we're using in every one of our handlers. And then we can manipulate the session and save it. So the pattern is get the session, look at it, manipulate it, whatever, and then save it. With the save down here. So in this case, we set it so we'd save the session. So what I did here, I got these from the form, I checked them to make sure it was a valid user, and then I set logged into yes, and then I saved the session. And then of course here maybe we would redirect. I don't know what we do if they validly logged in. We'd probably redirect, right? That's probably what we do. So let's do that. you can do that with redirect, resurrect, and then you pass it the URL you want to redirect to. I'm just going to go to slash, so the root URL, and 302 for the, okay, so that's how you do a redirect. So save session, redirect to main page. Because normally when I go to a website and I log in, I have that login form, I click submit, then I end up back on the home page, right? Except now it has like, you're logged in, blah, 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 at the top. And that's what we're doing here. We're just redirecting to the main page after we've saved it. Now, if we get to here at this point, that means we didn't do the post stuff. So let me have the return here. That means that we're just seeing the form normally. So the way we would do that is we would load the templates. So I'm just going to say down here, render login form, okay? Because we know how to do that from the above example. But that's where you would do the render login form. Similar idea for the logout page. We just grab this. And so what I do here is I get the session, and then I delete the value out of it, and I called it logged _ in, and then I save the session, and then I redirect. So that's typically how you do a logout. So I get the session, I clear the logged in thing from the session, so I'm basically emptying the session. I save that, and then I redirect. Now when I go to /home, I don't see, oh, so-and-so is logged in anymore because that doesn't exist. I cleared it. I deleted the logged in thing. So that's typically how we do the log out. So let's save that. And so let's see. So that's how we do session. Now we can store anything we want in those sessions, but we only need to store one thing. But we could store also their email. You could store other things in there. To list a directory, so I'm going to make another file in here called files.go. Whoops, that made a folder.
You committed at this point?
I did. So we have to have package main, remember, and then, so if I want to get all the files in a directory, so I'm going to return a slice of string, and so expect return to be something like files.go or perhaps I only want the templates. Let's just say I wanted to do that. Then it would be assets/templates/index.gohtml, and then so that's what I want this function to return. Basically a list of all the files in a folder. Let's see the login. That's what so the way we do that is first we create an empty list. So we create an empty slice of strings. So you can also use make. It's equivalent. And then we use filepath.walk. That takes the directory you want to walk, so we can use // or we can just use the empty string to mean the current directory, or I could say assets, and that would be the assets folder in the current directory. If I do /assets, that means the root. That means go all the way to the root of the file system and look for assets. You don't want to do that. So We're just going to look in the current directory. And then we're going to pass in a function. The first thing is the path, which is a string. That's going to be the name of the file. The second thing is file info, and that's OS file info. That's going to have things like the mod time, some stuff, file size, some other stuff in there. Error, which we're just not going to worry about. And then the function returns an error. And so we have to return nil. That'll be the last thing we do. And the first thing we do is say if it's a dir, it's a directory, we just skip it because we don't want to include directories. Like I didn't have, in this list, I didn't have assets, right? I just have files. And so say I only want Go HTML files, I can use the extension. So I can say if strings dot has suffix, give it the path and say .go HTML. And then if, so I'm going to say I only want .go HTML files, then I do that. I say files equal append files path. Okay. Now in Windows, files come with the wrong slashes. They have backslashes. So you have to.
I like when you categorize those as wrong.
You have to replace them. And so you do like this. There. And that fixed that problem.
I found a method in file path called /.
Yeah. I mean, there's also like an OS that file path separator or something. So, but I'm not going to about it. This works just as well. It does the same thing. And then we just say return files. Okay? So we make an empty list, and we walk all the directories, and if it ends with a Go HTML file, if it ends with a Go HTML extension, we add it to the list. Okay? This pattern, files equal append files path, that's how you add to a list in Go. So that's the pattern for adding to a slice of strings. Okay? And then you return them. And so this uses closure. That's this variable. This is an anonymous function. Okay? But you don't have to totally understand that. You can just look at it. Use the code. So that's how we walk a directory. Okay? So we can change this to walk different directories. We can change this to return different files. But the basic idea is this is going to give me my list of string. Plugging this into our other example, I can put that into a template and then render HTML based on the list of string. Uploading a file. So I'm going to make another Go file in here called upload.go. And so let's say we had upload page. This is going to take the same that all these do. They all have the same res rec stuff. So this is a route that we would call this a page or a route. To receive a file, we use rec.form file and the name of the file, like the input name. So I'll put that, here. Right, that's what this comes from. And that's going to return the file, a header, and maybe an error. So the reason why the error can happen is if it wasn't passed in. And that can happen if the form wasn't submitted. So like in the other example, the first thing we probably need to do is check that it was submitted with that, okay? And so now this code's only happening if a form was submitted. So if there's an error, then we need to do the same logic we did over here, the 500 stuff. And then, so now we have a reader. So if we want to write to a file, the way we can do that is we can create a file. I'm going to call this /some file. The same bit of error handling. and then we say defer f.close. So I need to do that up here actually too. And then we just say, so I'll rename these so it's more clear. So we'll call that source, destination, and then so create a new file, copy the uploaded file into the new file. So I didn't use header, so anything about headers, we can do this, file name, and now it'll be called the same thing the user called it when they uploaded it. And that's how we can write out a file. And so now you would want to, well, actually that's probably all you do. So the things we need to change about this are at the bottom, render the upload page, and at the top, check for valid session, right? Because otherwise anybody could upload a file. We only want admins to upload a file, so we have to check for valid session first. If there's not a valid session, return an error or redirect the person or whatever, but don't do this code, right? Everybody following? Yeah. Okay, so that's how we upload a file. And finally, to set up TOS, I'm going to go here. So let me add that code.
Thank you.
And I'm going to change this to listen and serve TOS. It takes, I think that's the order. Let me go look it up again. Yeah, cert and then key. And so to get these, to generate the cert and key, do this. So I put it in here. You just copy this line of code, paste it, change the host to say localhost, and that will generate the files. Oh, thank you. And so that generates the file, so I'll just put that in the code. And now we have a secure HTTP server. So okay, so that's like all of the stuff I just described. That should be enough to build the whole thing. You just have to connect all the pieces together. Any questions?
Yeah, what GitHub is that on?
It's over here. Golang dashbook
Thank you.
/ bootcamp - examples. And so they're all in here. What we're in day 3. Oh, here they are. So all the things I just did are up here now. Okay. So yeah, just keep working on this. The intention is to finish it, and so we're just going to keep working on it until everybody has something, and then we'll start to show it. Okay. If we manage to get that done today, then I will show how to run this on our real server. Okay. Any questions? Perfect.